we've outsourced all our thinking to the machine, okay? Then when the machine stops, we actually don't know how to live anymore.
Welcome back to CHATROG, where we explore the moral questions raised by the development and use or misuse of artificial intelligence. I'm Roger Steare, the corporate philosopher. My guest today is James Wilson, a seasoned AI ethicist and author of Artificial Negligence. What a wonderful title. James has spent over 3 decades working with data and technology firms like Capgemini and Gartner, and he's advised global organizations on how to make AI safer and use it responsibly. His book, Artificial Negligence, takes the complex world of AI and makes it understandable and often funny for the rest of us, while asking some very serious questions about ethics, privacy, work, and what it means to be human in the age of AI. James, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you, Roger. It's fantastic to be here.
So let's deep dive more into artificial negligence. What do you mean by that? And can we or could we compare it to professional negligence in law or medicine?
Absolutely. It's a brilliant question, and it's something I'm very passionate about. I seem to be not getting as much traction on as I'd hope in some places, but I totally agree that I was thinking of that exact thing when I came up with it one night. It was just a momentary sort of spark of genius, well, very rare on my part, but negligence just was perfect. And then if you see the cover of the book, you see it's very easy to just cross out the first few letters of intelligence and put negligence above it. It works really well. But I was thinking of the Hippocratic Oath. When I wrote that, I was thinking, well, if I was a doctor and I released, I gave a patient a prescription that caused them harm, I would get barred from my profession. Yet we see this every day. I mean, it's like every second news story at the moment is Meta or OpenAI or Character or whatever doing something retrospectively after the harm has been done. So they've given the patient the prescription and they've just watched them get ill. And then they've gone, oh, that's a bad thing. We'll fix it. So I, in my ideal world, I would love to see a scenario where there was a Hippocratic Oath for AI or AI developers. And if you cross that line, you will get barred from working in AI, just like a doctor would get barred from working in medicine. And I hope that we can come to some sort of moderation, medium position between where some of that can take effect, but it will require obviously regulation to make that work.
And who would do the disqualification or barring of directors?
Yeah, that's a great question, because that body doesn't exist, and certainly with the current flux and inadequacy of regulation related to AI, there is no obvious place for that to live. I think we have to maybe think about a slightly different approach. Maybe this is what I'm saying. That maybe there's a medium approach, some mid-level compromise, if you like, that we could consider, which is the Air Traffic Safety Bureau, which IATA or something like that. The acronym escapes me, but they will basically record and report all incidents of air safety at the moment, and then countries are able to basically say, well, we're not going to have that airline landing or even flying through our airspace because of their safety record. Well, if we had something similar at a global level around AI, that would be a nice compromise, I think. It damage the markets of these companies.
And we do have a situation at the moment where in certain cases, corporate manslaughter charges could be brought against corporations and in theory against individuals, but that happens incredibly rarely. And we know that there are vulnerable teenagers talking to AI chatbots for therapy, and the chatbots end up occasionally encouraging them to take their own lives. I mean, we're not talking about a minor risk here. We're talking about AI on the back of social media platforms, on the back of smartphones, pervading billions of minds. I mean, what should we all be doing about this? We're all friends, parents, some of us grandparents, and so on.
Yeah, and the number one thing that I think, and the biggest challenge there is from a humanity perspective, is our own anthropocentrism. The fact that we seem to think everything needs to be shaped like the image of a human. But then, the anthropomorphism, which is the way that we actually achieve that, it's incredibly effective and it's incredibly promoted by the model providers. I mean, there was a huge hoo-ha last year when I can't remember which GPT 4.3, whatever it was, but one of them came out and they were trying to use a voice that sounded very like Scarlett Johansson's voice, and they were playing it up against the movie Her and so on. Anthropomorphism is a real problem. It's creating unhealthy, trusted relationships with people, and minors are, incredibly vulnerable, and they're not fully, they aren't able to make the sort of logical, I don't know, intuitive decisions that we make about, what's real and what isn't real. And they build these unhealthy relationships. And you're right. You've got Molly Russell was one of the first to be affected. You've got Syl Setzer last year, and then you got Adam Rain this year, and the chap in Belgium. I mean, I could go on for hours listing people that have been harmed or damaged in some way by this. And one of the strongest things, or the things that I try and push through the most, is make your AI, if there isn't a good reason for it, make your AI as androgynous as possible. Don't make it look like a human. We do it all the time. I anthropomorphize really random things. Like my rowing machine's called Roland, and my blender is called Brenda. And I used to have a Roomba called Robbie, but I got annoyed with it because it never actually picked anything up. But yeah, so we do it naturally. Let's just not encourage it.
Love Brenda the blender.
Oh, she's
okay,
great.
let's take this in the direction of a linked area, which is privacy, autonomy, targeted advertising, and data use controlled by AI. They feature prominently in your book. And of course, many of the tech companies deploying AI are actually advertising agencies who are making loads of money through clicks.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what needs to happen here? What practical step could we as individuals and governments and industries take to reclaim autonomy over personal data? Or do you think it's just out of the bag? It's out of the toothpaste. The paste is out of the tube.
Yeah, there's a couple of things there. So firstly, I think it's incredibly difficult these days. I mean, this thing, this watch is tracking all sorts of stuff, but I actually quite like the stuff it tracks because it's useful for me. But it's also tracking my location and things which maybe shouldn't be. Phone's doing it all the time, and it's very difficult to actually find which settings to turn off where, to stop it on all the apps that run on it from tracking everything you're doing and which websites you're visiting and all that sort of stuff. So the landscape's got very difficult. Ring doorbells is another one. I mean, they're a horrendous privacy invader. So we are moving towards, a surveillance state, surveillance capitalism from Sushant's book.
Yeah,
it's going to be difficult. I think that without sort of going and living in a cave in the middle of nowhere, it's very difficult to distance yourself entirely from having your data tracked. But what you can do is you can be as purposeful as possible about limiting that data. So I've got a fairly new electric car I got recently this year, and when you actually it's a Toyota, which is a lovely car, but when you try and register so that you can use the GPS and all the servicing and find out where it's an electric one. So I need to know where all the charging stations are and all that sort of stuff. When you read through the terms and conditions, the amount of data they're collecting about you every time you sit down, your weight on the seat, all that sort of stuff is getting measured. You need to take the time to read those terms and conditions, and you need to make sure you're comfortable with it. And you also, one thing I strongly recommend is if you cannot understand the terms and conditions clearly, or you're not comfortable with them, don't sign up for it. I had a great example about a year or so ago where I was using some medical insurance for something, and they asked me to sign to some terms and conditions. And one of the terms and conditions was, we will use this information and any other information we need, basically. And I'm thinking, that's a bit vague. What else might you want? Like bank details? I mean, it's very unclear sometimes what they're actually using. So you have to be pretty deliberate about it, and you also have to be willing to not accept. We're very convenience based now. We want to do everything that's available to us. If it's available to you for free, it's not free at all. It's all about they're getting your data because they can sell it onto a broker, or they can use it for their own products and services. Consider that. Are you actually willing for them to do that before you actually click OK?
You've just sparked an idea. What do you think about this? So what if instead of getting apps for free, we paid for them?
Hmm.
There's lots of apps we do paid for, excuse me. And what if the tech companies had to pay us a penny for every bit of data they harvested? That would sort it out, wouldn't it?
I would absolutely love that idea. And in fact, actually, when I think it was last year or maybe the year before, YouTube went to or offered a subscription-based model where you could pay and they wouldn't show you adverts. But it depends on your level of trust of these companies. When I read the T's and C's, I actually thought about doing that because actually, A, because the adverts are really annoying, and B, because I thought I liked the idea of not giving them my data. But then I thought about it. I thought, well, actually, they must still have to use my data. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to service me with the right things that I might want to watch. I'm just going to get random cat videos all the time or whatever. And so I thought, well, actually, it's not really achieving it. So you'd actually have to know in that circumstance that if they genuinely are not using your data, that it's not going into an algorithm, and it's not being sold to uh, my Samsung TV. I'm advertising the product I've got here, but my Samsung TV, when I tried to set up my Samsung account so I can use the online features on it, it said, "Do you want to accept all of our advertising part? If not, click here." I clicked then. It was on the remote control. So this was actually on the TV itself. I clicked there, and then I had to go through 540 something advertising partners. 540 advertising partners. I had to go through one by one. That's over 1,000 clicks on the remote by the time you go no, next, and so on, to stop them. So that's where your data's going. That's 500 partners just for your Samsung TV.
Absolutely. Let's now pivot to work and the world of work. You explore AI's effects on jobs creativity and self-worth. Are we
Yeah,
headed for mass redundancies or new forms of work or both?
brilliant. I'll tell you a story, this is actually going to take a few minutes to get through, but I think it's worth going through this.
Please.
So back in the mid-60s, there's a life sciences company in the States, which is now, I believe, part of Johnson and Johnson. I think it was consumed at some stage. They picked up on some research that had been done by Stanford University, which showed that you could train a pigeon to do jobs. And what they did was they with 2 weeks of reward training, they basically were able to train pigeons to sit on their conveyor belt that all their pills and capsules went along and pick off the ones that were faulty in some way. And every 10 that they dropped in a pot, they got a little bit of seed, And they ended up, I think they had 13 pigeons sitting on their conveyor belt doing this. And it took away 70 dull and drudgerous jobs in doing that. In fact, it sounds really, really great. Okay. Until the animal rights people got involved. And the animal rights people said it was cruel for the pigeons, and it was stopped. Okay. So remember that story. Okay. So the pigeons were sitting there packing all these pills off this conveyor belt. Now move forward to today with AI coming into the workplace. So let's say I had a job that had 3 tasks, A, B, and C. The C was kind of like the final munging together approval step, like the human in the loop bit that you always have to have. Right? So I do A, B, and C. I might enjoy this for A and B, you never know. But actually, my company, from an efficiency perspective, has said, well, A and B can be automated. We can put an agent on each of those, and they can do A and B for you. So suddenly, I've gone from doing A, B, and C to just doing C like this all day. I'm just basically pressing the button. Because these guys are more efficient, my 2 agent friends are so much more efficient, what actually then happens is the tick speed of business is improving, it's getting faster. And suddenly I'm no longer actually just going once every half an hour, go. I'm doing it every 5 minutes. My mental health is getting, my stress level's going up. My mental health is getting harmed. I'm also really, really hacked off because I'm no longer able to do the really cool stuff that was in A because there's an AI that's doing it for me. So when we get to that stage, what's different between me and that pigeon? That we didn't think it was right for a pigeon to be doing that job, and now we're saying it's okay for a human to be doing that job. It's a really interesting parallel to think about, okay? Because my company haven't offered me anything better to do. They haven't offered me a D, E, and F to do because they've agentified those as well. So I look around and I find a company where I can do A, B, and C. So I leave. Now, my company has got a skills gap, and they need to hire somebody to replace me. But now they're looking for somebody who knows how to do C. They're looking for a new pigeon for that role. And when they do that, that means that they've still got that skills gap. And if A and B stop working, or they want to just look at innovating the whole process, they've no longer got that human experience within the company. And so it's an issue not only for me as a person, but actually for the company. So you have to make sure that when we're implementing AI, we're not just replacing people. We're finding ways of keeping that intellectual property, and that knowledge and that experience within the company, and looking for ways to expand their role, to transform the company.
Indeed. And in other podcasts, our guests have talked about the fact that whilst technology, AI-driven technology can remove the boring, repetitive jobs from our work, it can't replace human creativity.
Absolutely.
And maybe if we look at young people and the future of education, what subjects would we advise them to focus on going forward? What's your answer to that?
And that's changing a little bit at the moment, because there's always been this situation where sort of Morovich's paradox has made it. So Morovich's paradox, if people don't know, is the thing broadly is the things that we find easiest to do are the things that robots will find hardest to do. And that's all, and we've had this shift from back, if you go in the 70s, 80s, it was AI was going to come in the form of robots and they were going to take over all the sort of manual labor, to suddenly now AI is about knowledge work. It's about, it's about the white collar jobs that are being impacted. So there's a kind of thinking that's doing stuff that's has some level of manual dexterity involved in it. So plumbers, Geoffrey Hinton is forever saying, go and get a plumbing qualification, City and Guilds or whatever, because that'll be one of the best jobs to do. Working with the team of people who are working very heavily with robotics, I think that's got a little bit of a limited shelf life, to be brutally honest. I'm seeing some of the progress there and thinking, wow, okay. I also know the founder of Bristol Robotics, and some of the stuff that they're doing about sensory and making touch and feel emotes is incredible. But that it leaves us with the things that, like you said, involve a level of creativity or a level of human empathy. And there are some jobs that I don't know about you, but I would not want to go to a robot doctor and be told I've got cancer. I would want that conversation to be an empathetic conversation with a human being. So I think jobs that involve a level of social care and human care will persist, which I think will translate somewhat into where society goes anyway. So because we'll see a lot of people like in more sort of socially involved lives and not so much in the office, because of a lot of work's being automated. If Sam Altman actually has said anything that actually is real, and I don't trust him at all, but if he has, and we have this time of abundance when we can all get to spend more time with our families and doing X, Y, and Z, then there will be probably roles that have for social care and so on that'll be useful for people in the future. That's it's not a good answer, because I personally, I think most people would still rather have some form of self-actualization through work.
So thinking about the skill sets, one of the most critical ones that is inferred in what you've been saying is digital and ethical literacy.
Yes.
Where is that both in our education system for young people, but where is it in adult education within the workplace?
And again, I've seen quite a shift in the last few years where people are really within the workplace. People are really driving AI literacy type role education programs within their organization, helping people to really understand the impact of it, how to use it, and it's critical. I think the EU AI Act actually mandates that you have to have an AI literacy program for anything that you deploy. So there's some effort going there, and some places it's better than others. There's some great organizations out there, like the Data Lodge in the States that basically drives that sort of literacy and do boot camps with employees to help them understand the impact. But it needs to be mass appeal within society. So I would say, I don't know about you, but I'm not really aware of any sort of public service programs for AI literacy within the UK that are particularly prevalent. Whereas if you go to somewhere like Finland, it's all over the place. They've been driving it for years. And in fact, actually, just a tip for anybody who's interested, who's listening, is that Helsinki University actually have an AI literacy program that is in English and is entirely free and can be done by anybody. So everybody in the UK could go off and do the one from Finland if they wanted. But I think it would be a great step to do that. But it does bring to mind one other thing, which is that the people that are driving this AI gold rush at the moment that we seem to be stuck in, there's Sam Altman, Mark Zuckerberg, my favorite person, and a couple of others that are really sort of building it. The ones that you always see sitting around a dinner table with Donald Trump now. Ask yourself this: did any one of those people do any form of sociology, political science, anything that could actually give them an understanding of what humanity is like before they dropped out of university. I guarantee none of them did. It was all computer science. And yet somehow these people have become the driving force behind what's happening to society at the moment.
Which brings me to the point of the other side of this question, ethical literacy. Now, you and I are both ethicists. We
Yes.
both avoid, where possible, giving them the right answer. Our
Hmm.
purpose is to educate them how to work it out for themselves.
Yes.
But after 25 years, from my perspective, it's still a very steep hill to climb. What's your perspective on the ethical literacy alongside the data literacy?
Yeah, and I have probably pretty much the same perspective. I often say so. Do you remember after the Hitchhiker's Guide series, Douglas Adams did a series of books called Dirk Gently, the Holistic Detective Agency? He had a brilliant character in there, very, very briefly, called the Electric Monk. And the Electric Monk was someone you could pay to do your believing for you. Okay. And which is fabulous concept. But I often say to people, I am not the electric monk for this company. My role here is not to do all the, be your moral compass. My role is to actually make sure that you all are considering all the moral issues related to what we're trying to do. And importantly, that somebody is taking responsibility. Someone takes accountability for, whatever happens. If we make that decision, I'm not going to say to you, oh, we can't do that. I might personally think it's a really bad idea, but I will lay all the evidence out for them and I will let them make their own decision about whether or not to go ahead. But if it does go wrong, or it does have the impact I expect it's going to have, then someone has to be accountable for that and the impact for that. Obviously, very, very often the evidence that I will give them, or the thoughts I will give them, are influential in making them step back. This could kill people. Well, clearly they're not going to take that risk. But it's not. It's great where I am right now. They really genuinely are taking this seriously, but I cannot speak for the rest of the corporate world at all.
So, what's your thinking there in terms of where AI and humanity might be able to work together as an electric monk?
Yes. So over the last 12 months or so, I've grown very tired of the sort of the hype. It's, the Nvidia are running at 27 times profit on the stock market at the moment because of the hype, and they're just the shovel providers for the gold rush. I mean, they're not actually the people that are building these things. And it's made me sort of look at things slightly differently, more practically. What are the limitations of AI that we're not really talking about? We know about it. So I work in the part of the time in what's called the AI Futures Lab at Capgemini. Brilliant organization, bunch of really, really great guys and girls that I work with. They're fabulous. We're very much about trying to cut through the hype, looking at what's happening in the future, but also trying to get to the realism of where we are today. The concept that AI can be unbiased and therefore could be a good moral reasoning, I think is hugely flawed, and I don't see it happening anytime soon. Every single AI is biased. It's created, it is a reflection. Shannon Valler's AI Mirror book, comes to mind there. It is absolutely a reflection of who we are, who the creators are. And take me, for instance, one of the reasons that I would never want to be the one that makes an ethical decision for the company on my own. As far as I'm concerned, I have at least 21 biases that I'm consciously aware of in what I do. I'm also a white, middle-aged, heterosexual IT professional. I'm a walking bias in everything I do. So if I was the one creating that system or part of that team, I am going to be biasing it the way it works. We're seeing it now, and beyond just the biases, our personal biases, we're seeing the ideological biases that are getting fed into these systems. DeepSeek, when it came out, famously would not talk about anything that happened in Tiananmen Square. Now, how long do you think it'll be before, if things continue the way they are in the United States, before some of the larger models out there will start spouting anti-abortion rhetoric every time you talk about another, all the other sort of policy things that come out from there. So I don't think we can ever trust it to be a moral reasoning sort of partner, but we can certainly use it for sparring ideas off them. I've seen a really good series actually where on YouTube. I can't remember what it's called, where they basically take all the big models, and they give it a question, and then they let them converse with each other to see who comes up with what point. So they'll ask them, "Is there a God?" for instance, and you can start to see from looking at that there are Claude comes out probably as the best, and we know that's something they promote themselves on. But DeepSeek and Llama, well, you would not want to ask them advice about anything.
Well, that's a fascinating. I wasn't aware of that discussion between the various chatbots. So what was the conclusion?
From memory, because it was a while ago that I watched that particular one, but from memory, it was very much, I think Claude and DeepSeek were the two that were pro God. And one of them actually, if I remember rightly, was actually very much aligned to my own perspective. I'm absolutely agnostic of any religion. I don't believe in organized religion the way it is today. I see a lot of problems with that, and that's a personal thing. But I'm happy for people to be religious. But what it did say was that there had to be some kind of ultimate force that was behind the creation of the universe, and that ultimate force is therefore God. It's the sort of Thomas Aquinas argument for what is is there a God? But yes, certainly. I'm pretty sure OpenAI and sort of ChatGPT and Llama both were very much pro-science and against the concept of God.
Thank you. So in terms of what we can do as ordinary citizens, and I'm thinking about the work you've been doing on children's AI safety, adults can get very motivated by protecting their children and their grandchildren. Do you think there's something there where we could build a movement which says, look, AI can do some wonderful things, but it can be incredibly damaging to younger minds? Do you think there's something there we can do in terms of getting a movement which really challenges some of these tech companies and makes them take responsibility for the exposure that young people have to that technology?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. So as you pointed out, I'm an ambassador for the Safe AI for Children fund, which is run by a lady called Tara Steele, who's absolutely magnificent, and is taking this all on her own shoulders to build this organization and is getting some real momentum behind it. She's also now on the advisory board for I'm going to get this wrong because it's one of the worst acronyms I've ever heard of, but it's the International Safe and Ethical AI Alliance, I think, which is an organization. It just doesn't roll off the tongue, does it? But it's run by Stuart Russell. I was attendee at their last thing at the OECD in February, but Tara's now advisor on there. So and they actually do have some government reach. For instance, that conference I went to in February was the week before the big Paris summit, which was a bit of a train wreck because of JD Vance, but at least it happened. But they get reach into that. Stuart is obviously a very well-known voice in this, and Max Tegmark as well, who's there. They're both very strong voices. Firstly, we can support the Safe AI for Children Alliance as much as we can. You can find their website, support them in any way you can. Listen, link up with Tara and with the organization to understand what she's doing. And then from a personal perspective, you absolutely have to pay a lot of attention to what your children are doing. I mean, all those terror stories, the Syl Seltzer one, the Adam Rain one, and other ones, if you read behind the lines, and I absolutely in no way am casting any aspersions on the parents, because we all do it. It's great to we want to give our teenagers then time where they can go and do their own thing, and we don't really want to know what they're doing. But make sure you're having regular conversations with your children. Make sure you are understanding if they're using character AI or ChatGPT or one of these things as a companion. Make sure you're understanding why and what they're doing. Don't rely on what's being put in place from the providers. OpenAI have talked about the fact that they are going to put in place protection now, so that if they think your child's in real danger, they're going to actually warn the parents and the parents' account. Well, firstly, your children probably aren't using a parent-linked account, because we saw that with the hilarious Pornhub thing recently, where they tried to put authentication on it, and everybody just started using VPN. It's like the government had never heard of VPN or something. Don't rely on that. Really, understand what your children are doing with their computers, and talk to them. And you can't wait for the providers to warn you, because that's too late. by that stage. You need to be getting to the heart of these problems early on. Look at some of the guidance that Tara's putting on Safe AI for Children's website, and there's more to come in that area as well. But it made me thank God that my children are all adults now, and the education, they would never, I hope, never ever do anything like that. But you have to be sure for yourself.
Thank you for that. So, where should we be optimistic or pessimistic about our ability to avoid artificial negligence in the years ahead?
Yes. So, thinking from a pessimistic perspective, I think that the lack of cohesive governance and regulation and the overarching rhetoric that's been placed about, if we don't do it first, China are going to do it first or whatever, which is driving this, accelerated adoption of AI without the safety measures. I think that's going to lead to almost certainly to some black swan events of some sort. Somewhere down the line, we're going to have another stock market crash like we had in 2008, but it's not going to be as recoverable as that one because, from a negligence perspective, part of the reason I called that book Negligence was it was about the fact that it doesn't have to be intentional. I mean, it could be intentional. We might, terrorists or whatever might find a way of destabilizing our financial markets, but it could be entirely through our negligence. I'm not actually testing it ourselves. Almost everything that can happen with AI is going to be a reflection of what the care we take into deploying it. So I think that's my first of two sort of really negative points. My other one is I'm really, really worried about the impact on our own mental development and the risk of enfeeblement for as we go forwards. Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow, System 1, System 2 thinking. There was some research done 2 years ago by the Catholic University of the Vatican, believe it or not. I didn't know that existed, but it does. And they did some research and they've introduced a concept called System 0 thinking. So when you think about System 1 thinking is that very instinctive thinking. System 2 is that very kind of considered, thinking things through. Learning to drive a car, I'm in System 2. Now I'm in System 1. I have no recollection of the journey, but my body gets me there. System 0 is basically we're not even getting through any of that. We're just literally outsourcing the entire decision-making process to AI and impacting our own development. And I think that's a big issue. Are you familiar with The Machine Stops by E.M. Forster?
No.
Okay, 100% recommend that you go and buy a copy of that book. It's only 70 pages long. E.M. Forster, the guy who wrote Passage to India and Room with a View. It's the most prophetic book about what's happening in society right now. And in that book, that we've outsourced all our thinking to the machine, okay? Then when the machine stops, we actually don't know how to live anymore. We've outsourced all our thinking to the machine, okay? Then when the machine stops, we actually don't know how to live anymore. We don't know how to repair any of the systems. And I see that as being the progression path we're on at the moment.
And what about the positives?
Yeah, that's harder. Yeah. No, look, there's a lot of great stuff. So, I mean, one of the great examples is, and this is not a Gen AI thing, really. This is an AI thing, right? People seem to get locked into AI just appeared in 2022. I mean, that's sort of, when ChatGPT came out, AI has been doing some fantastic stuff for a long time. I saw a report recently that the stroke recovery rate in the UK has trebled because of the AI systems they use, which are not Gen AI systems. These are analytic systems that are based on, more classical symbolic models that are, and sort of predictive models that are able to, identify the recovery path for patients. So I see a lot of that kind of stuff is getting better and better. So although this focus is all on Gen AI, there's a lot of great stuff happening with statistical models as well. And I think that will absolutely continue going forwards. And I also, was there something else that came to mind when we were saying that so I think also just in general, the general consciousness of the risks of AI by the public is increasing. And I think that will naturally slow down some of the risks that we're seeing at the moment, or at least alleviate a bit of those risks. People are beginning to think a little bit more before they actually just hop on and use some AI tool. And we're seeing also in parallel quite a drop off in social media use, which I think is fabulous in general. I don't use social media at all apart from LinkedIn. It's for professional purposes.
Thank you. As we close, in your professional opinion, you've kindly shared quite a lot of advice and observations. Is there anything else that you think we should be doing to avoid artificial negligence and build a better world for all life on Earth?
The hyperscalers that actually provide these tools, and the model providers, are very much keeping their cards close to their chests about what the real environmental impact is of these tools. If you actually look at the very rare, but there is some independent research that's been done, that's been, properly laboratory research, where they've taken servers with some NVIDIA things in and they've put LLMs on them and done some tests. The most reliable, the most interesting one was one done by Emma Strubel from Stanford. And she established that 4 pictures created with stable diffusion, just because that was the model she used, could be DALL-E, could be whatever, was equivalent to charging an iPhone from 0 to 100% in terms of the energy usage. And it took and it actually destroyed or removed 0.5 liter of potable water from the environment. Okay. Now, when she did that research, there were about 10 million pictures being created a day. So that's 2.5 million iPhones, which is charging to make pictures, not videos, which are even more expensive, but just pictures. And if you think about that now, and that was 2023, late 2023, that's gone through the roof. So think about that now. If you're using DALL-E or whatever, Sora, the video one, think about, do you really need another picture of a teddy bear skateboarding down Fifth Avenue? Do you really need it? Okay, because it has a huge environmental impact. I'll leave you with this thought, my sort of last comment on that. Last year, Google decided they wanted to open a new data center in Chile, because of obviously AI is just going mad. So they wanted to open a new data center. They submitted their papers for planning permission to the Chilean government, and in those papers, it's the one time that they've given some properly factual, tangible information about the environmental impact. They said it would require 189 liters of water per second to cool the data center. That's 8,000 times the usage by the population that use that existing water source. So you can imagine, just from the water shortage perspective, that would be horrendous.
Indeed. Does it make a difference if more power generation is clean?
So solar or nuclear, for instance.
Yeah.
It can in the long term. I totally agree. We don't have the infrastructure for it today. And I also question the, I've forgotten what it's called now, but the phased environmental impact of creating the panels, creating the nuclear reactor, that they all have an environmental cost of their own. So yes, look, we can do better. We can definitely do better. But until we do better, let's just be more purposeful about how we're using it. And it's for our own good anyway. The more purposeful we are, the less likely we are to do something stupid with it.
Absolutely. James Wilson, author of Artificial Negligence, thank you for being a brilliant guest on ChatRog and for giving us such fascinating insights. And I'm just going to share 3 that have stuck in my mind. There are many more. Please re-listen to this. But to you warn that AI is enabling us increasingly to be living in a surveillance state. And you are someone who has been looking at this for a long time, so we should definitely take this warning seriously. You also urge us to make time to read those lengthy terms and conditions, because all too many companies are tricking us into giving away anything they want in terms of our data. And we found out that some large language models believe or don't believe in God. And so, James, thank you. And to our audience, thank you for downloading this. This podcast is available both as an audio and video in all the usual places.
I would have done my hair.
So if you're normally a listener, but would actually like to watch the conversation, search for ChatRog on YouTube. If you'd like to take our discussion somewhere where watching is difficult, then download the audio version and listen to it in the gym or on your way to work. We really appreciate your feedback. Please comment on the podcasts. We're new at this and your thoughts are really valuable. And it helps enormously with the algorithm if you like and subscribe. And if you feel so moved, leave us a 5-star review. So, James, on that note, it's the first time, I mean, AI is called godlike technology. That's what E.O. Wilson called technology, didn't he?
Yes.
On that note, thanks again. And to all our listeners, thank you. And we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.